I'm your host, Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident. I was recently having a conversation, and someone said to me rather offhandedly a comment that I received as something like, "You must not even see your kids during the week." That was like how I received it. I don't remember the exact words, but it was kind of this offhanded dismissiveness of, if you and your husband both work outside the home, the consequence of that must be that you don't see your kids. And they said something to the effect of, it must be nice to have care who raises them. And two things happened. One is my blood started boiling because it's not actually true about our home. It's not actually true about our days. It's not actually a representative headline of what our family is like. I'm very much in my kids' lives, and I'm very much there for most of when they're not in school. But the other thing that it made me realize is that my 41-and-a-half-year-old self can hear those words and say, I hear you. I get that that's your perspective, but I know the truth of my family, and I'm good with the decisions that we've made, and I'm good with the relationships that we have. And in fact, I would say I'm proud of the decisions we've made, and I'm proud of the relationships that we have. But I know for sure if my 31-year-old self would have heard something similar to that, I would have spent weeks wrestling with a lack of confidence in the decisions that we'd made. Even though I know for certain the path that I've on is one that is so clearly been articulated to me as a person of faith, I feel called to the journey that I'm on, and I'm very clear about that. Even with that confidence, my greatest fear as a kid, I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. My mom was there all the time. And the stereotype in my head as a kid, and even as like a young adult, was that if I worked outside the home, that I would not have a relationship with my kids. That was my greatest fear. And I have a feeling that there's somebody listening to this podcast that either you have articulated that to yourself or you haven't yet. But in your heart is this fear that if I have a career I love and I choose to have kids, that I'm not going to have a relationship with them. I worried about whether or not I'd know how to put my babies to sleep. I'd worry about whether or not I knew how to specifically parent the different temperament of my children. I worried about all that stuff when I was a really young mom. My more mature self knows for sure I have deep relationships with my kids. I know what's going on in their hearts. I know what's going on at school. We have deep, rich relationships about the role of their character, of the things that we want to teach. We're intentional about those things. But I've been a mom for almost 13 years now, and so I know I have evidence that those things aren't true. But when you're early in the journey and somebody says that to you, it can shake your confidence. And if there is someone listening that has either someone said that to you or they've said it with their eyes, they didn't need to say the words to you, I want you to hear from me that you can have both. You can have a deep, rich relationship as a family and also have a 2-career home. To say it's easy would be lying to you. But like anything that we want, when we set intention, when we set ground rules, when we have agreements in place and we honor those in our relationships, you can certainly have both. And so if you've felt that from someone, I want you to hear from me that I'm sorry. I want you to know that it's possible. And I want you to look for evidence in your own family about, is that actually true? Is it actually true that there's a lack of relationship? Is it actually true that you're never there? Or is someone just trying to help make you feel like that's your reality? One of the ways that I've quieted the fear for me, and if you look back in this podcast, we had a conversation with my girls and asked them, like, what do you love about your mom? And to go back and listen to that and to hear the richness of our relationship come through in their answers and the closeness that we have. I don't know what will happen as they get older, but I work so hard to make sure that my girls, when I put them to bed, one of the last questions I always ask them is, anything else you need from me? Because I want to be sure I have this pause of patience before we shut down the house for the night. And sometimes there is something else that they need from me. I haven't been as perceptive as I need it to be. But ask your kids, stay close to them, fight for those intimate relationships with them, and don't let the outside world tell you what it needs to look like. So what else is on your mind? Text me, 317-350-8921, 317-350-8921. And be sure to follow along on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening today.